All right, you little coders, this is part 2 of our video series where we're going over the nutrition label freeCodeCamp is having us build out in its workshop. So if you are new to this channel, my name is Rob. I'm with PreCodeCamp, and I am taking the approach of going through the material, going through these steps to give you an instructor point of view where you are the student and you are trying to learn these steps and why are we doing these things. And so that is the purpose of this video, and it will be chaptered out down below. So if you need to skip to a certain step that you might be stuck on, you can go ahead and do. Now, with that being said, I hope that you can do us one little favor, which is hit the like button on this video, because it does help out us with the YouTube algorithm. Lets us know that, yeah, you were helped. And furthermore, it's free. Yeah, it's free. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the code and where we left off. All right, we are on step number 18 here, and this is one of the new properties that we have seen with freeCodeCamp because we haven't been introduced to it quite yet from any of the other workshops or any of the other labs. And what letter spacing is going to do here for us is it can either bring letters closer together or spread them out. And we are specifically applying this to the H1. Now I'm going to exaggerate this just so you can see those letters spread out, and you can see how they are being spread out, right? But it wants us to use the 0.15, and it will just move them ever so slightly together. Now, I will mention this on here is that when we're dealing with letter spacing, it's really font specific. And depending upon what font you are using, you'll get different results for having a letter spacing of 0.15 pixels, for example. And if you ever need to change something back later on, it would be letter spacing normal, would bring everything back to what the font was very specific in using to make it look decent on the page. So anyways, this should complete our step. Let's go ahead and check our code. There we go. And we're moving on to the next section here. All right, step number 19 here, it wants us to add the class of bold to our second paragraph tag. So let's go ahead and come down here, class, and then we add bold on here. Now, nothing's going to happen because we don't have a class on our style sheet that addresses what should bold look like. And I'm assuming that's what we're going to be doing next. So let's go ahead and check our code here. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next step. Right, so step number 20, it says your new class doesn't have any styling yet. Didn't I just get done saying that? It's like it's trying to copy me. Anyways, it says create a bold selector. So let's do that. It doesn't matter where it goes. I'm going to go ahead and place it here. And it wants us to add the property here of font weight and set it to 800. And then it says, go ahead and remove the font weight of 800 from the H1. So I can go ahead and do that. Perfect. So I'm wondering if we're going to be adding the class of bold to our nutrition facts. So we'll see. Let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. All right, step number 21 here. It says give your H1 the element class of bold. Man, I tell you, I haven't really gone through this, but it is like I'm predicting what's going to be happening here. And that's going to be the same for when you guys are doing your own development, making things customizes. It's totally up to have a style with simply just one thing in it. If I come down here to that bold that we just got done doing, right? We can put bold on anything. A class can go on multiple elements, which is really nice. And so later on, we might see something like an element that has 2 classes on there or 3 classes on there. And that is a lot like how things like Bootstrap and Tailwind, they use multiple classes that are almost simply just one property of changing. So anyways, it's just something neat. It's something interesting to think about of, hey, I can make a CSS to just bold things. And that's what we're doing here. So we're coming up here to the H1 and we're putting the class, we're setting that to bold. And now our nutrition facts up at the very top has that font weight that gives that more of an impact. Let's go ahead and check our code. Already knew it was good. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Step number 22, it says we need some horizontal spacing between equally important elements that can increase the readability for the text. So we're going to wrap the 2/3 cup, 55 grams, and put it in a span. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this text here. It's a lot easier doing it this way for me. And I'm going to cut it with a Control X or a Command X on a Mac. And then I can put my span tag in there and I'm going to close off the span. This is something that's used quite a lot if you are wanting to really not affect the flow of your items, your HTML elements, because it's not a block level element. And we can apply styling to a specific couple words if we want. And like I said, it doesn't move it to the next level. So that's why we're not seeing like a div here, for example. So spans really great for styling a group of words, or maybe you have some sort of image or anything really that you just want to go ahead and say, hey, this specifically I want to have a little bit different, but I don't want to take it out of the flow of a normal HTML block. So let's go and check our code. There we go. We're moving on to the next step. All right, step number 23 says now we can add some horizontal spacing by utilizing the display flex. And then also we want to do justify content space between. So let's try this out and see what we get. We're going to do display flex, and then we're going to go ahead and do the justify content. And we want to set that to space between. One of the things here that the display flex does, it breaks it up, allows it to go all into one row. Not really important right now, because if we take a look at the span tag already is an inline element, inline block element. And by doing a display flex, we really didn't do anything, but as far as visually, but the justify content, that's where it spread it out. So it shoved everything to the left, put some space between them, and then shoved the other part to the right. And obviously if we had more stuff, it would space it evenly with 3 items on there. And that's what the space between does. All right, let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next section here. Let me shrink this up, by the way. All right, so step number 24, it says wrap everything that's in the label in a new header. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the guts of this. And just like before, on a Mac, I'm going to do Command X. On Windows, I would do a Control X. That got rid of everything. Don't worry, it's on your clipboard. And we want to wrap it with a header. So I'm going to go ahead and put my header div in here, and then I'm going to close it off. And this is the header element that we just got done adding. And then I'm going to hit the enter key and go ahead and paste. Now, don't worry, these inside things may look ugly right here. And when we click the next step, freeCodeCamp already has it pre-saved with the way that they want it. All right, let's go ahead and click the check the code. Really, we're not going to visually see anything different, but we got the congratulations. We're moving on to the next problem here. So step number 25, it says now update your H1 selector and change it to header H1. So what we're doing here is we're being very specific in our selection, because later on we may have an H1, but typically, I really don't understand this part here. W3 schools, Indian docs, they say every document should just have a single H1 on the page. So I don't know why we have to be very specific on this H1, but we will. So we'll do header and then hit the space and do H1. And that will go ahead and now officially singly and target only the header H1. So in case we have another H1 up above, it does not affect it. So let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step here. Step number 26 in freeCodeCamp's build a nutritional label. It says on here, create a new div element. So let's do that first. Div, close it off as well. And then it says it wants to add 2 classes on here. We're going to add the class of divider and then a class of large. So I'm going to do class. And whenever we have multiple classes, we just want to put a space in between them. So we're going to do divider and then large. Now, it doesn't matter as far as the order that they go in unless there's some overriding capability of them. So meaning that if divider had a font size of 15, but then large had one of font size of 25, the 25 is going to win because it comes in the order. But as far as this goes, I would keep it the same as what they have up here. I don't know if their unit tests are very specific enough to saying, hey, make sure that the class name up here has this exactly spelled the way that we have it up here, or if it's smart enough to know, hey, large and divider or divider and large go together. All right, I believe that's all it wants for this. Let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next. Step number 27, create a new selector called large. Let's do that. And it says give it a height property and set it to 10 pixels. Then create a large and medium selector and set it to the background color to black. Now, I don't think we're going to see anything because we don't have classes on here that talk about that. Or maybe we do. I can't remember. Let's see. Yeah, we definitely don't have a medium, but we do have a large. So we'll see something. After this, let's go ahead and do the multiple selector that we have, which is the large and medium. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that right there. And then we can open up that curly bracket. Next on here, we're going to add the background color and make it black. All right, so that just added a nice large line, very similar to what we saw up here underneath the nutrition facts. All right, let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. Step number 28 says you may notice that there's still a small border at the bottom of your large element. Let's go ahead and reset that by setting the border property and change it to 0. So let's go ahead and do that by doing the following. We'll do a border, we'll set that to 0, and there we go. Let's check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. Step number 29, it says create a new div just below your large element and give it a class of calories info. All right, so we've done this before. We're just going to do a simple div, and then we'll close it off. And then we'll come back here to add the class. Remember, classes go inside the tags, and we'll do class. We'll set that equal to calories, and then the hyphen info. All right, that's all at once. Check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. Step number 30 in building a nutrition label for freeCodeCamp. It looks like it says within the calorie info element, create a div element. Now that div element is going to have a class attribute of left container. So I'm going to pause reading right there and let's just go through a few of the steps that is wanting us to do. It says, let's do a div, and I'm going to go ahead and close that off. Again, good practice to go ahead and close those off. I'm going to give myself a little more room here. That way we can freely type. And it says that it needs to have a class of left container. So let's give it a class of left container. Perfect. It says in your newly created div, create an H2 element. So coming in here, let's do an H2 and close that off. Again, practice closing those off. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it in the forums that they're not being done. So anyways, we have the H2, and then it says we want the text to have the following, which is amount per serving. So let's go ahead and put that in between the tags. Now the H2 needs to have a class attribute of bold and then small text. So let's do that. So things to recognize on here, the bold, and then there's a space, and then small hyphen text. And that's what's going to go on this H2. All right, so I think that is it for this one. There we go. Let's move on to the next step. Step number 31. Let's go ahead and use the rem units, and it stands for root M, which is relative to the font size of the HTML element. We're going to create a small text selector, so let's do that. So it's dot small text. And then it says that we want to set the font size to 0.85 REM, which is the root M. And so how is it getting this calculation? So it's getting it from, again, the root. And what's it talking about? If you remember, in one of the earlier steps, we set the font size to 16. I believe the natural font size for a default is 12 pixels, but here's how the math works on it. So if we're using 0.85, and so let me go ahead and pull this up here, 0.85 times the size of the HTML font size times 16 will essentially equate to 13.6 pixels. Actually, if we come down here and we were to change this to the calculated 13.6, it would be equivalent. Now, why would we want to use the rem? Why couldn't we just put the 13.6? That is in case you want to change the font size later on for maybe smaller screens. So maybe smaller screens, you're like, hey, I want to go down to 12 for my root. And guess what? You don't have to change any of your other fonts because it's 85% of the root. That's what this is all about. So anyways, I know it's a hard concept to maybe think about right now at your stage, but it is really useful when you are trying to think about mobile font sizes. So that way later on you can do media queries for different screen sizes, and you only have to change one value for the font that will affect the rest of your web page. Downfall, maybe it tweaks it too much and you don't want to use that for a certain given element, and you just want to specify, hey, no matter what screen size this is, I want it to be this font size. So anyways, it's a give and take when it comes to this stuff. And here's the congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. Step number 32 is we're going to go ahead and target this class here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it and copy it and put it in here. So again, this is saying, hey, any H2s that belong in this section here of the calorie info, I want it to have 0 margins on here. So we're going to do margins 0, because later on we might have another H2 on the page. We don't want to affect that H2. It's only this specific one that happens to be wrapped in the calorie info. So it's going to look for, hey, is there a calorie info? Oh, look, there's an H2 inside here. And so that's how it's going to go about that. Let's go ahead and check our code. Oh, I misspelled margins. Here, we'll just do margin, and then there we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next part here. All right, step number 33 of building a nutritional label for freeCodeCamp. It says, below the small text element, which happens to be right here, let's go ahead and add a P element with the text saying calories. So let's go ahead and do that. P, close it off. And then we're going to go ahead and set up this right here, which is calories. Below the left corner element, go ahead and create a new span. And let's go ahead and set that to 230. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll do a span here, and then we want to set that to 230. Let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. All right, step number 34, go ahead and create the new calorie info selector. So we're going to go ahead and do the following. So we have the class of calories info, and we open up the curly brackets on here. And then it says we want the display to be flex. And then we want the justify content to be space between. And then next we want to align the property and set it to flex end. So align items needs to be set to flex end. There we go. And so you can see that it shoved the 230 to the end there. All right, let's go ahead and check our code. And there we go. We got the congratulations. All right, so we got a little more work done. This is the end of the part 2 series of the Build a Nutritional Label for freeCodeCamp. And things are coming together, right? We saw a little bit of flex. We got usage of the span. We saw that we could put multiple classes on one element to get the results that we want. So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this section of the video. Please like the video, share it with somebody that might be helpful, and we'll see you in the next series.